In Stanley Kubrick's epic 2001: A Space Odyssey, the monolith is revered by a tribe of primitive apes. The monolith, as we would find out, is not what it appears. In The Paradise Syndrome, we'll also discover a monolith, in this case, an obelisk. It's not what it appears to be, and the primitive, though not prehistoric society is greatly influenced by the presence of that structure. This is not to suggest that 2001 was in any way influenced by this Star Trek story. We aired near the end of 1968, and 2001 came out afterwards. But parallels can be interesting.
I wonder if what part of it they're seeing that is really the character, or me, you know. Because I get in my mail, a lot of it seems to think that a lot of me is in that character.
What the doctor ordered, Jim.
There's an old film that floats around every now and then that I wish they could all see, called Apache Uprising, in which I played a heavy. And at first we had this guy riding into town, and a dog is barking at my horse, and I shoot the dog. And that was cut. But I think if they had seen this guy, they would have been able to divorce me a little easier. I admired McCoy very much, and I wish that I could be the kind of person that he is. But I'm not up to that yet. I'm going to get there.
I never will understand the medical mind.
What's the matter, Jim?
The reality is the Earth is dying. We're killing it.
This atmosphere is remarkably similar to your 20th century. Moderately industrialized pollution, containing substantial amounts of carbon monoxide, and partially consumed hydrocarbons.
The word was smog.
And in a very short period of time, as short as our lifetimes, we're all going to die. Unless something extraordinary happens, like to stop the internal combustion engine. We're not going to do that. We humans will die. Life will go on.
Incredible that people can exist like this.
In those weird moments of anomaly, when we decide to clean something up, like the Thames or the river in New Jersey, suddenly the fish come back and life resumes. Not in 100 years, not in 1,000 years, but in a year, 2, 3 years, the Great Lakes suddenly bloom again because we've cleaned it up.
Look at those pine trees. And that lake.
But we're not doing that. We are burning fuel at a faster rate. We're becoming more numerous at a faster rate.
The birth rate continued to rise, and the population grew until now Gideon is encased in a living mass who can find no rest, no peace, no joy.
We are burning the forests down at an increasing rate, and so we are blindly looking to shows like Star Trek to say there is a future, when in fact, if we don't answer the call, there's no future at all.
Captain, a most curious development on scanner 5-7.
Let's all take a look at it, Mr. Spock.
I know from good writing, I know from past writing, this was wonderful, wonderful writing. And you put great writing together with terrific acting. You know, it's, wow, is there anything better than that? No. I mean, take a look at all the brilliance that has been on television, with all the Dick Van Dyke shows and all the Honeymooners and the Phil Silver shows, and Star Trek is right up there. Brilliant writing, episode after episode after episode, and say what you want, you know, I mean, Shatner and Nimoy, and brilliant.
Parts of this episode were shot on location, a rarity for Star Trek, especially during the budgetary crunch of our third and final season. It seemed as though the ship was sinking. Gene Roddenberry was busy producing a feature film, Pretty Maids All in a Row, starring Rock Hudson and Angie Dickinson. The series budget was now only $178,500 per episode, down from $187,500. Each episode was shot in only 5 days with, if you can imagine this, 30 camera setups a day, which, take it from me, is a lot. There was no support from the network, and morale all-time low. It's a wonder any episode was ever completed at all.
Captain, a most curious development on scanner 5-7.
Let's all take a look at it, Mr. Spock.
A terrible thing has happened. The boy was attending the fish nets, and he became entangled in them and sank to the bottom of the river.
I did another show some years later called Rescue 911. And Rescue 911 was successful because we concentrated on the people that were saved, not the people that died. And the people and the other shows that spun off from or imitated Rescue 911 and that failed made the dire mistake of telling the story of the people who died.
You'll be all right now.
The original story outline and the final script for the Paradise Syndrome were vastly different. In the initial teleplay called The Paleface, Kirk's amnesia was the result of a head wound. His memory was restored when he realized he was fighting against Spock. And Miramani, Kirk's wife, survived. Just think, Kirk would actually have had a child long before the one we learned about in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Imagine the possibilities. Kirk and offspring together on their mission throughout the galaxies. Do you think he would have let his kid steer the Enterprise? No.
In the second season episode, Who Mourns for Adonais, the crew of the Enterprise encountered an alien being who had once been revered as the god Apollo on Earth. With their superior abilities, Apollo and his fellow Olympians appeared to the ancient Greeks to be nothing less than supreme beings. Now imagine the situation in reverse. What if we were suddenly to appear before a primitive species? With our machines and our understanding of medicine and science, with all of the wonderful things we can do, we might be mistaken for gods as well. Paradise Syndrome was directed by Judd Taylor, who was a longtime friend of mine and one of the first people to encourage me to turn to directing. In fact, in the early 60s, when Judd was directing The Man from U.N.C.L.E., I sort of followed him around to study the process of pre-production and post-production. During the third season of Star Trek, producer Fred Freiberger asked me for suggestions for directors, and I gave him Judd Taylor's name. Judd came on board to direct this episode and ended up directing many more in the series. One of the best things about this episode is that we got to shoot on location. Simply suggesting an Earth-like setting gave us a reason to get away from our barren planet set. Presented with a Star Trek dilemma, once again we were faced with eliminating the captain's love interest by the end of the show. So in a tragic twist, we say goodbye to Miramani and the little captain-to-be.